This is the second part of a two-part review of the Audeze LCD GX. In the first video, we discussed the GX's performance as it relates to audiophiles. We talked about its sound signature, detail retrieval, soundstage, and compared it to several planar magnetic headphones. In this video, we will talk about the GX's performance as a gaming headphone. At the end of this video, we will also discuss the overall value and conclusion. The question I had when I first read the GX's product description was this: what is so special about the GX? Yes, it is a planar magnetic headphone, but there is a long and growing list of cheaper planar magnetic options in the market. If you read Audeze's description of the GX, you'll walk away feeling enthusiastic. If you read reviews from the typical gamer review news feeds, you might be heavily tempted to accept the hyperbole. And if you've watched the handful of YouTube reviews discussing the GX, you may believe that this headphone, though expensive, might elevate your gaming experience. I'm going to break things down. I want to know, and I think anybody remotely interested in this headphone and who actually intends to spend money on it also would like to know an answer to the following question. What is so darn special about the GX that it costs $1,000? Audeze provides incredibly vague promises about the GX. All they say is that the GX has better bass, superior soundstage, and outstanding resolution when compared to other gaming headphones. I even looked at the sorry excuse for reviews you can find on sites like PC Mag, Player One, and other such sources. Why did I look at these sites? Because gamers frequent these sites for reviews and suggestions on what to buy. I had reservations about the authors of those reviews, particularly whether they actually have any experience with audiophile headphones. I found a number of quotations I want to highlight, and these are some of the things I found intriguing, to say the least. Player One, for example, says, quote, "The LCD GX really does offer the most clean-sounding game audio possible. Because of the open-back design, audio just seems to float around your head instead of being piped into your ears like with other headsets." End quote. Player One compared the GX to the Astro A20, by the way, a headphone that sells for around $100. Funny enough, PC Mag tested the GX with titles like SpongeBob SquarePants: The Battle for Bikini Bottom, Forza Horizon 4, and Doom Eternal. Their assessment, from what I could tell, was basically that the GX makes sounds happen real good. MMORPG says that the GX's detail is hype-worthy. They claim, quote, "The detail the GX reveals is next level even compared to something like the Anandas," end quote. They conclude that the GX is not only the best gaming headset I've ever heard, but they might be the best headphone, period. With high praise like this, one should expect outstanding, unrivaled performance. Here's the methodology I employed to try to reach an answer. I paired the GX to my gaming PC, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. Sadly, I don't have the PlayStation 5. I used the GX with amplifiers and through direct connection into the relevant controllers. I played a number of titles I own, including Halo 5, Horizon Zero Dawn, Titanfall 2, The Witcher 3, Call of Duty, Overwatch, and some original Nintendo and Super Nintendo titles on the Switch. I compared the GX to the Sennheiser GSP600, hifi Mansundara, Sifka P2, and Austrian Audio HiX55 and the X65. How are we going to determine if the GX outperforms these cheaper alternatives? The gameplay analysis is largely subjective. It's rather difficult to be immersed in a game, pause, switch headphones, and then continue, all while trying to ascertain if one headphone has different performance than another. It's simply not a logical way of testing. What I did instead was play the same levels over and over again. I switched headphones after completing the same level. This is, without doubt, not an A/B test. However, for a more quantitative test, I watched YouTube gameplay of the same titles as the one I tested. I plugged the headphones into a passive A/B switch, and this way was able to hear if there were differences. After all, somebody else was playing the games while I was just doing the listening. In this more quantitative test, I wanted to know the following information. Are footsteps clearer on the GX than on other headphones? Are gunshots easier to locate? Does the GX provide clearer environmental sounds with more separation from other gameplay elements? Do character voices sound more detailed on the GX? Are any subtle sounds more easily audible on the GX versus the other headphones? With all of this in mind, in the next section, we will discuss my subjective findings while playing the games and the more quantitative findings while watching gameplay. In this section, we will talk about my subjective, unscientific experience while playing several games on various systems. I already outlined the systems and games I used in the previous section. We will also talk about my more quantitative findings while watching gameplay. Let's start with my gaming experience. Any claim that the GX provides all the details or effects in a game are obviously hyperbole. It is simply not true. There is something to be said, however, about the GX's clarity in gaming. Yes, the GX does provide a modicum of clarity compared to something like, say, the GSP-600. Sounds had more separation among themselves, and it was a little easier to hear crisp footsteps while using the GX. The GSP-600 did not muffle these sounds, but they did not stand out as much as they did on the GX. But when I compared the GX to the Sundara, the P2, and especially the Austrian Audio headphones, the story was very different. I think the Sundara, P2, and GX all had similar clarity and soundstage during gaming. The GX, for example, never presented footsteps, gunfire, NPC background voices, or subtle sounds much differently from these other planar headphones. I'm happy to point out that there were some occasions when it seemed as if the GX made gunshots appear more sharply than the Sundara or P2, but it was not as if the GX let me hear the direction where those shots were coming from any better than these other headphones. And yes, I would concede that sometimes it seemed that the GX provided a bit more bass than the Sundara, but the Sundara has a sub-bass roll-off anyway. When I compared the GX against the Austrian Audio headphones, well, there is a noticeable difference in clarity, placement, and detail. The Austrian Audio headphones simply had a lot more of all of this. While the X55, X65, and GX all rendered footsteps and gunshots and let me hear generally the direction from where those shots were coming, the Austrian Audio headphones simply separated those sounds more from all the other sounds in the games. In-game dialogue, different background music, and game soundtracks were differently presented on all of these headphones. After all, each of them has their own sound signature. I read in a few reviews of the GX that the GX makes character voices sound clearer or more realistic. Well, I don't think any of the headphones I tested made character voices sound unrealistic. It's not like the GSP-600 made Aloy in Horizon Zero Dawn or one of the generic characters in Call of Duty or Geralt from The Witcher 3 sound odd. Let's briefly discuss the quantitative test I used during the A/B testing portion. What I heard during the A/B test was entirely consistent with what I experienced while playing these games. Essentially, the GX did sound clearer and had wider soundstage than the GSP-600. But when compared against the Sundara, P2, and Austrian Audio headphones, the GX had no advantage. The fact is that when I just sat and watched gameplay, the Austrian Audio headphones demonstrated greater separation, detail, and object placement than these other headphones. None of the other headphones provided as much nuanced and clear sounds as the X55 and X65. This, I think, is a little bit telling. After all, these two headphones are dynamic driver headphones. Moreover, these two headphones require very little power to work. You can plug them into any gaming controller you want because of their low impedance, and they'll work just fine. The one cautionary thing about the X55 and X65 is that, well, they're not really the normal sounding headphones. After all, the X55 and X65 are more towards the analytical side of music, and their analytical nature really does come out and shine when you're playing games. Because when you're playing games that have a lot of sound around you, that have gunshots and footsteps and character voices, these two headphones separate all of that information and then shove it right into your noggin. That may or may not be pleasing to you, but if your goal is to use a headphone to parse out details in a game or soundtrack, then the Austrian Audio headphones do that in spades. Ultimately, while the GX might be a superior gaming headphone when compared to other gaming headphones, that's not the experience when the GX is compared to other audiophile headphones. And this is precisely why people need to spend time doing actual A/B tests with comparable products. The truth reveals itself very quickly under those circumstances. If you're an audiophile, then you likely know a little bit about power requirements. There's a tremendous amount of misinformation on this subject. Forums and manufacturers provide a lot of confusing and sometimes outright false information about power output and power requirements for certain products. Here, let us discuss the GX's power requirements. Most of the reviews I read about the GX talked about how the GX worked just fine with gaming consoles through the relevant controllers. Some talked about how an amplifier brings the best out of the GX. Audeze says that the GX will work with a wide variety of devices, but they also suggest you pair the GX with a DAC and amplifier. I decided to use a fake name and contact Audeze about some information. I wanted to know how Audeze would react to someone who seemed interested in buying their $1,000 headphone. I asked them 4 very simple questions. Number 1. Can I simply plug the GX into my PS4 and Xbox One controllers? I've read that planar headphones need a lot of power, and I don't think these controllers can do that, but I just want to check. Number 2. Is there an amp you can recommend that I can use with my gaming consoles and PC? If not, what specifications should I look for in an amp that will be powerful enough for the GX to work at its best? Number 3. What type of mic is included with the headphone? Is it broadcast quality, and is it from another company like Sennheiser or somewhere else? And number 4. Is there any gaming software that's included, like with Sound Blaster, Razer, and Logitech headphones? An Audeze representative got back to me within a few hours, and the rep said the following. The GX can be driven on controllers, phones, or portable music players without the need of an amp or DAC. The rep recommended 5 amps for the GX, including the Shit Hell. The rep said that the Hell was developed using the GX as a reference. I contacted Shit later and confirmed this, though both companies refused to explain how the GX was used as a reference. The GX microphone is their standard mic, and there is no gaming software for the GX. Of course, we are interested in the first response, that the GX does not need an amp. Some reviewers suggest this as well, and Audeze's marketing is, well, less than clear. Audeze's GX specifications say that the GX needs a minimum of 100 milliwatts and recommends at least 250 milliwatts for peak performance. And let's not forget the little blurb on the website where Audeze says it might be good to have an amplifier. The answer here is patently obvious. The GX absolutely needs an amplifier, one that provides around 250 milliwatts. No controller for your PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, or any other gaming hardware has that much power. No phone has that much power. Of course, I plugged the GX into the various controllers and my LG V30 just to be sure, and of course, the result was unsurprising. The GX does get loud on gaming controllers, but even at maximum volume, the headphone sounds muddy and carries some lingering bass distortion. There's also some harshness in the treble region, particularly with gunshots. When I plugged the GX into my Chord Mojo, Sound Blaster G6, Shit Magni Heresy, and Earman TR amp, the experience was vastly different. It was evident that with the correct amount of power, the GX has more clarity, more separation of gameplay elements, and less treble harshness than when the GX is connected to controllers. The bottom line is that the GX needs an amplifier. For any reviewer to suggest otherwise is misleading, and for Audeze to indicate that the GX works fine without an amplifier is patently false. I've been using the GX's microphone throughout this video. This is what the microphone for a $1,000 headphone sounds like. I plugged the GX into my Sound Blaster G6 and recorded into Audacity. Naturally, I had to boost levels considerably, but that is the only alteration I made to the recording. I assure you, the sound from a desktop microphone will be far clearer and more detailed than the mic off this $1,000 audiophile grade gaming headset. I admit that gaming headsets have awful microphones as a general rule. There are exceptions here and there, but they are few and far between. But it is much easier to forgive a bad mic from a $100 or $200 or $300 headset. What is Audeze's excuse for not providing superb microphone quality in their $1,000 headphone? It should not be a surprise to anyone that companies say that their products are the best. They have to. But when companies make specific promises, then those are essentially guarantees that induce customers to buy. I can say that the GX's marketing from Audeze is vague enough that they don't really make any specific promises. Yes, they claim that the GX is better than other gaming headphones, but that's hardly noteworthy. After all, Generally speaking, gaming headphones don't exactly have audiophile performance. The GX is not a bad headphone. It is a competent one. If you watched the first video, then you have an idea about the GX's sound signature. You may or may not like it. But no one can rightfully say that the GX has a muffled or boomy or distorted sound when it gets proper power. For audiophile performance, the GX is as good as far cheaper alternatives. When it comes to gaming performance, well, that may depend entirely upon your perspective. If you compare the GX against a typical gaming headphone, then I am sure you may say that the GX is leagues better. You may even feel that it has revelatory detail and placement compared to an Astro or Logitech or Razer headphone. But isn't that a terribly low bar to measure the GX against? It's like saying that Dwayne Johnson is bigger than a 14-year-old. Compare The Rock to Arnold Schwarzenegger and the comparison is far less impressive. Here's my point. I think it is silly, counterproductive, and downright disingenuous to compare the GX to typical gaming headphones. If this headphone is made for the serious audiophile gamer, then Audeze and its reviewer community should have the courage to compare the GX to other audiophile headphones. And when we actually compare the GX to other audiophile headphones, the story is much different from the narrative Audeze and some reviewers are promoting. The GX does not outperform the Sundara, the P2, or the Austrian Audio headphones in games. All of these headphones produce obvious and subtle game sounds. All of them provide clarity. But it was only the Austrian Audio headphones that noticeably, consistently, and precisely dissected sounds during gameplay. Not by huge margins all the time, I want to make that clear, but it was noticeable. And the Austrian Audio headphones are half the price of the GX. Now, someone will point out that the GX has something these other headphones do not: a microphone. Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that the GX's microphone sounds remotely worth the $1,000 price tag for this headphone? If you answered no, then the GX's microphone is of little relevance. You could buy any of the alternative headphones I mentioned, splurge on a good desktop microphone, and still pay far less than the GX's MSRP. We should also discuss the power requirements for the GX. It's a serious issue, one that should be emphasized above and beyond the GX's general sound signature. Yes, you can plug the GX into your Xbox and PlayStation controllers and crank up the volume, but you will hamper the headphone's capabilities that way. It is fundamentally disingenuous for Audeze and reviewers to say that the GX works fine with controllers. What bothers me is the blatant misinformation coming from Audeze. Their own website says that the GX needs a bare minimum of 100 milliwatts and at least 250 milliwatts for optimum performance. Yet, no gaming controller I know of provides anywhere close to that amount of power for headphones. So, why would Audeze and certain reviewers say otherwise? To sell units, obviously. If you plug this $1,000 headphone into your phone or gaming controller, that is essentially like buying a Mercedes and then driving it on its rims. Believe me, the car salesman will say anything to get you to buy the darn car, even when he says something that is obviously not true. If you're going to buy the GX, do yourself a favor and buy an amplifier. But the question remains, who is this headphone for and what does it do better than others? This brings us to value. There is no way I would ever think that the GX, a $1,000 gaming headphone, is reasonable. It is abysmal value. It is a waste of money. It is bonkers. Who the hell needs a $1,000 headphone to play games? Well, maybe people with lots of money burning a hole in their pockets and those who think having bling will make them better gamers. Yes, this is harsh commentary, but we have to be realistic. I have repeatedly found that Audeze products, though generally good, are horrible value propositions. I have time and again pointed out Audeze's lackluster customer service, their less than honest marketing, and the shoddiness of some of their products. While the GX does not seem to have any immediate build issues, I am thoroughly unimpressed with their marketing. The GX might very well outperform gaming headphones, but that's the lowest bar to step over. It's like saying your headphones sound better than the earbuds you found wedged between the seats of a used couch. I cannot recommend the GX for gaming. Its microphone performance is average at best. Its size and weight is not practical for mobile use. Its power requirements demand you spend more money on an amplifier to make the setup more complex. The GX's accessories are shockingly bad for a $1,000 headphone. The microphone cable alone is a slap to the consumer's face. And then you have to factor the GX's performance compared to far cheaper audiophile alternatives for gaming. Yes, you will need to add a microphone to all of those other headphones I compared. Yes, that's extra money. But you can buy the Mod Mic wireless for around $100 and have as good an experience but for a lot less money than the GX. Or you can choose to buy a desktop microphone with better audio quality. In fact, Fifine makes good mics for less than $50, or you can buy more expensive stuff if you so choose. Every time I think about the GX, I run up against its ridiculous price. There is no justification for it. I don't know what Audeze was thinking, but somewhere between concept and finished product, they missed the mark by a wide margin. Trying to create a new niche like the serious audiophile gamer is total BS. That is pretentious, egotistical, and utterly nonsensical. The shot callers at Audeze were seriously out of their minds when they came up with the serious audiophile gamer tagline. Serious gamers enjoy their games, whether they're good at them or, as in my case, barely competent. Serious gamers save money to buy the games that appeal to them. Serious audiophiles don't throw $1,000 at a headphone just because it looks good. Serious audiophiles know the difference between BS marketing and a good product. The GX, unfortunately, is a good product that is hampered, delayed, dragged, and drowned by its price. The most annoying aspect of all of this is that headphones that cost half the money actually do what the GX purportedly is supposed to do. The GX is likely king of the hill when compared to typical gaming headphones. It is an average and overpriced headphone when compared against other good products. I suggest you look at the Hifi Man Sundara and Sivka P2 if you want a planar magnetic headphone for gaming. And if you want actual detail, separation, soundstage, object placement, and resolution, then take a look at the Austrian Audio Hi X55 and X65. Clearly, Audeze was ignoring the customer base when they made the GX. So I suggest you ignore the GX.